The morning sun cast long shadows across the salvage yard as Jinho kicked at a piece of twisted metal. Another day, another search through the endless wreckage that covered Sector 7. His boots crunched on broken glass and rusted parts from ships that crashed here long before he was born. "Stay close," Mireille called from 20 meters away. His older sister always worried too much. She was bent over a pile of circuit boards, her scanner beeping softly as it searched for anything valuable. "The ground gets unstable near the deep craters." Jinho rolled his eyes. He had been working these salvage runs for 3 years now, ever since he turned 14. He knew every dangerous spot in their sector. The mining colony of Kepler 442b was not a forgiving place, but it was home. Most families here made their living pulling useful parts from the spacecraft graveyard that stretched for kilometers in every direction. "I found something," Jinho called back, though he was not sure what it was yet. His scanner was going crazy, beeping faster than he had ever heard it before. The readings made no sense. According to the device, there was a massive energy signature buried under the pile of debris in front of him. Mireille jogged over, her tool belt jangling with each step. She was 22 and had the serious look of someone who took care of her younger brother since their parents worked double shifts at the processing plant. "What kind of reading are you getting?" Jinho showed her the scanner display. The numbers were higher than anything they had seen before. "It says there is something big down there, really big." They spent the next 2 hours moving debris. Most of it was the usual junk, broken hull plating, burned-out engines, shattered viewports. But as they dug deeper, Jinho noticed something strange. The metal pieces they were removing seemed newer somehow, less corroded than everything else in the yard. "Look at this," Mireille said, holding up a piece of hull plating. "This metal should be rusty after sitting out here for decades, but it looks almost new." Jinho nodded, wiping sweat from his forehead. The twin suns were getting higher, making the work harder. But something about this dig felt different. Important. His scanner was still beeping like mad, and the energy readings were getting stronger. Then he saw it. A smooth, dark surface emerged from under the last layer of debris. It was not like any ship hull he had ever seen. Instead of the rough welded plates that made up most spacecraft, this surface was seamless. It looked like it had been carved from a single piece of black stone, but when Jinho touched it, the material felt warm and almost alive. "Mireille, come look at this." His sister dropped the metal scrap she was holding and hurried over. When she saw the exposed surface, her eyes went wide. "What kind of ship is this?" They cleared more debris, revealing a section about 3 meters wide. Strange symbols covered the surface, flowing in lines that seemed to follow no pattern Jinho could understand. The symbols were dark against the black hull, but as he stared at them, he could swear they were getting brighter. "We should report this to the colony administration," Mireille said, backing away from the ship. "This is not like anything in the databases, could be dangerous." But Jinho was not listening. The symbols were definitely glowing now, pulsing with a soft blue light that seemed to match his heartbeat. One section of the hull looked different from the rest. It was smoother, with what looked like the outline of a hand pressed into the surface. "Jinho, step away from that thing," Mireille warned. She had pulled out her communicator and was trying to raise their father at the processing plant. Jinho reached out toward the hand-shaped outline. He could not explain why, but something was pulling him toward it. The symbols around the outline were glowing brighter now, and he could feel warmth radiating from the surface. "Do not touch that," Mireille shouted, but it was too late. The moment Jinho's palm pressed against the outline, everything changed. The symbols along the hull blazed with brilliant light, racing in flowing patterns across the surface like liquid fire. The ground under their feet began to vibrate, and a deep humming sound filled the air. More sections of the ship revealed themselves as debris simply fell away, pushed aside by some invisible force. What they had thought was just a piece of hull was actually the top of something enormous. The ship kept revealing itself, section after section, until they were standing next to a vessel that was easily 200 meters long. Its surface was perfect, unmarked by age or damage. The symbols continued their dancing patterns of light, and the humming grew stronger. "What did you do?" Mirai grabbed Jinho's arm, trying to pull him away from the ship. I do not know, Jinho said, staring at his hand. The palm that had touched the ship was tingling, and he could see faint lines of blue light under his skin, fading even as he watched. It just felt like I was supposed to. The humming sound changed, becoming more complex. It almost sounded like music now, like voices singing in harmony. Lights began appearing along the length of the ship, forming patterns that hurt to look at directly. Then, with a sound like a giant taking a deep breath, sections of the hull began to open. Mirai's communicator crackled to life. Mirai, this is Control. We are reading massive energy spikes from Sector 7. What is your status? She keyed the device with shaking hands. Control, we have a situation. We found something big. Jinho could not take his eyes off the Yao ship. Sections of the hull had folded back like flower petals, revealing glimpses of corridors lit with the same blue light as the symbols. But what made his heart race were the shapes moving inside those corridors. Tall figures that walked upright, but moved with perfect mechanical precision. Control, we need backup in Sector 7, Mirai was saying into her communicator. We have an active contact situation. One of the figures appeared at the nearest opening in the ship's hull. It was clearly artificial, made of the same dark material as the ship itself, but it moved like something alive. As Jinho watched, it stepped out of the ship and onto the salvage yard ground. The robot, for that is what it had to be, was nearly 3 meters tall. Its design was elegant, with smooth curves instead of the blocky angles of the mining robots back in town. Blue light flowed through channels in its surface like glowing veins. When it turned to look at them, its face was almost human except for the eyes which burned with the same blue fire as the ship's symbols. More robots emerged from other openings, dozens of them, all different sizes and designs, but all sharing that same graceful movement and glowing blue light. They formed a loose circle around Jinho and Mirai, but made no threatening moves. The first robot, clearly the leader, approached, slowly. When it was close enough to touch, it stopped and did something that made Jinho's knees weak. It knelt. Young Commander, the robot said in perfect, unaccented Korean. We have waited so long for your return. Jinho stared at the kneeling robot, his mouth dry as dust. The machine was calling him Commander, but he was just a 17-year-old salvage worker who had never commanded anything more complicated than a mining drone. Around him, dozens of other robots had emerged from the ship, all standing in perfect formation like soldiers waiting for orders. Get up, Jinho said quietly. Please get up. The tall robot rose smoothly to its feet. As you wish, young Commander. I am Unit Prime Alpha, primary interface of the vessel Eternal Vigil. We have maintained readiness protocols for 3,047 standard years, awaiting the return of the Commander species. Mirai grabbed Jinho's arm so hard it hurt. Commander species? Jinho, what is it talking about? Before anyone could answer, the sound of approaching vehicles filled the air. 3 colony security transports were racing across the salvage yard, kicking up clouds of dust. Jinho could see his father Taejin in the lead vehicle, his face tight with worry. The transport skidded to a halt 30 meters away, and armed security personnel poured out. They took defensive positions behind their vehicles, weapons trained, on the robots. Taejin pushed through the security line, ignoring the protests of the team leader. Jinho, Mirai, get away from those things! Taejin shouted as he ran toward them. He was the chief engineer for the colony's mining operation, a practical man who trusted machines only when he understood how they worked. These robots were clearly beyond anything he had ever seen. Unit Prime Alpha turned toward the approaching humans but made no aggressive moves. Additional human contacts detected, scanning for commander potential. The robot's eyes flared brighter for a moment. Negative. Standard classification protocols apply. Standard what? Taejin reached his children and immediately tried to push them behind him. What do you want with my son? Your offspring has activated our vessel and assumed command authority. Unit Prime Alpha explained in the same calm voice. We exist to serve the commander species. We have waited long for this moment. The security team leader, A woman named Captain Nari approached with her weapon still raised. I am ordering you to release the civilians and return to your vessel. Unit Prime Alpha regarded her with what might have been curiosity. You hold no authority over this unit. Only commanders may issue directives to Architect Technology. Architect Technology? Taijin stepped closer to the robot, his engineer's mind already working on the puzzle. Who are the architects? Our creators, Unit Prime Alpha said. A species that transcended physical existence approximately 4,000 years ago. Before their departure, they constructed 12 vessels as gifts for humanity. We are the caretakers of their legacy. Jinho found his voice again. Why humanity? Why us? The robot's head tilted slightly, a surprisingly human gesture. The architects observed many species across the galaxy. Most proved inadequate. Some lacked creativity. Others possessed insufficient adaptability. Many failed the moral evaluation protocols. Humanity alone demonstrated the required combination of innovation, growth potential, and ethical development. More robots were emerging from the ship now. Jinho counted at least 40 of them, all different designs. Some were humanoid like Unit Prime Alpha, while others moved on multiple legs or hovered above the ground. All shared the same graceful movements and blue glowing energy channels. This is insane, Captain Nari muttered into her communicator. Control, we need backup, lots of backup. A smaller robot, about the size of a child, approached Mirai. Unlike the others, this one's movements seemed more playful, almost curious. You are genetically related to the young commander, it observed. Fascinating. The family unit structure remains important to human development. Mirai knelt down to the robot's level, her fear giving way to wonder. What is your designation? I am Caretaker Unit 17, but the architects programmed us with individual identity concepts. You may call me Echo. The small robot's voice had a lighter tone than the others. I am responsible for cultural preservation and education protocols. Taijin was staring at the massive ship with an engineer's eye. The energy readings from this thing must be off the charts. What kind of power source are you using? Quantum resonance matrices drawing energy from dimensional fluctuations, Unit Prime Alpha replied. The technology is beyond current human understanding, but it will be taught to those who demonstrate readiness. And you decide who is ready? Captain Nari demanded. The ship's systems determine readiness based on architect protocols. The young commander activated the vessel successfully. Others may be evaluated, but activation requires specific neural patterns found only in commander-class individuals. Jinho stepped forward, still overwhelmed but trying to understand. You said there are 12 ships like this one? Correct. 11 others remain dormant across human space, awaiting activation by qualified commanders. The Eternal Vigil was positioned here based on probability calculations regarding human expansion patterns. What are we supposed to command you to do? Jinho asked. Unit Prime Alpha gestured toward the sky. Prepare humanity for its role as galactic guardians. The architects departed because they faced a threat they could not defeat alone. That threat still exists and it grows stronger. Humanity must be ready to face what the architects called the hunger. The hunger? Taijin's engineering mind was clearly struggling with concepts that had no technical specifications. What kind of threat? An entity that consumes entire star systems, Echo explained. Her smaller form somehow making the terrifying information sound less threatening. It exists partially outside normal spacetime, making conventional weapons ineffective. Only architect technology, guided by human intuition and creativity, can harm it. The implications hit Jinho like a physical blow. These robots expected him to help prepare humanity to fight something that destroyed stars. He was barely old enough to vote, and he had never been in a real fight in his life. I cannot do this, he said quietly. You have the wrong person. I am just a salvage worker. Unit Prime Alpha's glowing eyes focused on him intently. The ship recognized your genetic and neural patterns, young commander. The activation was not accidental. You possess the required qualities even if they remain undeveloped. What qualities? Mireille asked, still fascinated by Echo. Leadership potential, creative problem-solving ability, moral flexibility combined, with ethical core strength and, most importantly, the capacity to inspire others to exceed their limitations. Unit Prime Alpha listed. These traits are rare and precious. Captain Nari lowered her weapon slightly. So you are saying this boy is some kind of chosen one? Not chosen, Echo corrected. Evolved. Humanity as a species has developed the traits the architects valued. Some individuals express these traits more strongly than others. Young Commander Jinho is one such individual. Taejin put his hand on his son's shoulder. Jinho, you do not have to do anything you do not want to do. Unit Prime Alpha straightened to full height. With respect, Engineer Taejin, the young commander's preferences are irrelevant. The hunger approaches. Long-range sensors indicate scout. Elements will reach this system within 6 months. Preparation cannot be delayed. The silence that followed was broken only by the wind blowing across the salvage yard. Jinho looked at the ship, at the robots, at his family and the security team. Everyone was waiting for him to make a decision that would change everything. "Can I see inside the ship?" he asked finally. "Of course, young commander. The eternal vigil is yours to command." As they walked toward the vessel, Jinho wondered if he was making the biggest mistake of his life, or taking the first step toward saving it. Walking inside the eternal vigil was like stepping into a dream. The corridors were wide enough for 3 people to walk side by side, with walls that glowed with soft blue light. The floor felt solid under Jinho's feet, but he could not identify the material. It was smoother than metal but warmer than stone. Unit Prime Alpha led them deeper into the ship, past rooms filled with technology that hummed quietly in the dim light. Jinho caught glimpses of screens showing star maps, chambers filled with equipment he could not begin to understand, and storage areas that seemed to stretch on forever. "The ship is much larger than it appears from outside," Taejin observed, his engineer's mind trying to make sense of what he was seeing. "The internal space does not match the external dimensions." Dimensional folding technology, Unit Prime Alpha explained without slowing down. The architects mastered the manipulation of spacetime. The ship's interior exists partially in compressed dimensional pockets. They reached the bridge, a circular room at the heart of the ship. The walls were covered with displays showing information in languages Jinho had never seen. In the center of the room stood a chair that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of crystal. "The command interface," Unit Prime Alpha said, gesturing toward the chair. "From here, you can access all ship systems and communicate with the Central Intelligence." "Central Intelligence?" Mireille asked, staying close to her brother. Before Unit Prime Alpha could answer, the air in front of them shimmered and a figure appeared. It was a woman, or at least looked like one. She was made of the same blue light as the ship's systems, translucent but clearly defined. Her face was kind, but carried the weight of centuries. "Hello, Jinho," the figure said in perfect Korean. "I am Area 7, the ship's central artificial intelligence. I have been waiting a very long time to meet you." Jinho stared at her, overwhelmed. "You know my name?" "I know much about you. The ship's scanners have been monitoring human development on this world for 50 years, waiting for the right individual to activate our systems." Area 7 smiled. "Your psychological profile matches architect requirements perfectly." "What requirements?" Jinho asked, though he was not sure he wanted to know the answer. Area 7 gestured, and the displays around the room changed. Images filled the walls, star systems, alien worlds, and species Jinho had never imagined. The architects spent millennia observing galactic civilization. They discovered that most intelligent species follow predictable patterns. They create technology, expand across their worlds, then either destroy themselves or stagnate. New images appeared. Cities in flames, dead worlds, extinct civilizations. But humans are different. You adapt constantly. You create art and music and stories. Most importantly, you help others become better than they thought possible. This is why you were chosen. Captain Nari, who had followed them into the ship despite Unit Prime Alpha's initial protests, stepped forward. Chosen for what exactly? The displays changed again, showing a dark region of space where stars simply ended. To face the hunger. It is not a species or a machine. It is something else entirely. A force that consumes everything, matter, energy, even space itself. The architects fought it for 1,000 years and could only slow its advance. Tejin was studying the technical readouts on the screens. How do you fight something like that? With creativity, adaptability, and the willingness to try impossible solutions, Area 7 replied. The architect technology responds to human intuition. When guided by human commanders, it can achieve things that pure logic cannot. Jinho sank into the command chair, and immediately the ship came alive around him. He could feel the eternal vigil's systems like extensions of his own body. The engines thrummed with contained power. Sensors showed him the world outside in perfect detail. He could sense every robot aboard the ship, each one ready to follow his orders. This is too much, he said, gripping the chair's arms. I am 17 years old. I have never commanded anything more complex than a salvage drone. Age is irrelevant, Unit Prime Alpha said. The architects learned that younger minds adapt more easily to their technology. Your neural pathways are still flexible enough to interface properly with ship systems. Area 7 moved closer to the chair. I can teach you, Jinho. The ship contains the complete knowledge of architect civilization. Engineering, tactics, history, philosophy. Everything you need to become the leader humanity requires. What about the other ships? Mirai asked. You said there are 11 more? The displays shifted to show a map of human space. 11 points of light marked locations scattered across dozens of star systems. Each ship waits for its own commander. When the Eternal Vigil fully activates, it will send signals to wake the others. But they will only respond to humans who meet the same criteria that allowed Jinho to activate this vessel. Jinho closed his eyes and tried to process everything. He was learning. When he opened them again, he noticed someone new had entered the bridge. It was Sujin, his childhood friend, and the best pilot on the colony. She looked as overwhelmed as he felt. The security team said you were inside some kind of alien ship, Sujin said, staring at the holographic displays. I had to see for myself. Area 7 turned toward her with obvious interest. Fascinating. Your presence here is not coincidental. The AI's eyes glowed brighter as she scanned the newcomer. Excellent spatial reasoning, superior reflexes, and natural tactical instincts. You would make an outstanding crew member. Crew member? Sujin looked confused. For what? For the mission to locate and activate the other ships, Unit Prime Alpha explained. The young commander cannot accomplish this task alone. He will need a team of humans who can interface with architect technology. Jinho stood up from the command chair, feeling slightly dizzy as he disconnected from the ship's systems. What happens if I say no? What if I decide this is too dangerous and walk away? The bridge fell silent. Even the quiet humming of the ship's systems seemed to fade. Finally, Area 7 spoke. Then humanity faces the hunger with the technology it has now. Conventional weapons that cannot harm an entity existing partially outside normal space. Ships that move at a fraction of light speed while the enemy can fold space itself. Your species would have perhaps 50 years before complete extinction. And if I say yes? Then you begin training immediately. You learn to command this ship and its crew. You help locate other potential commanders. And in 6 months, when the Hungers scouts arrive in this system, you fight the first battle in a war that will determine whether human civilization survives. Jinho looked at his sister, his father, and his friend. Their faces showed fear, confusion, and worry. But underneath those emotions, he could see something else. Hope. They believed in him even when he did not believe in himself. I need time to think, he said finally. Area 7 nodded. You have until tomorrow morning. After that, the ship must begin active preparations whether you choose to command it or not. As they walked back through the ship's corridors toward the exit, Jinho felt the weight of the entire galaxy pressing down on his shoulders. Tomorrow, he would have to choose between the safety of ignorance and the terrible responsibility of knowledge. He just hoped he would make the right decision. 3 days had passed since Jinho first activated the Eternal Vigil. Word of the alien ship had spread far beyond the mining colony, and now government officials were arriving from across human space. The quiet salvage yard had become a bustling, military camp overnight. Jinho stood at the observation window in the ship's medical bay, watching shuttle after shuttle land outside. Soldiers in battle armor took positions around the perimeter, while scientists set up scanning equipment. Everyone wanted to study the ship and its robot crew. "You look troubled, young commander," Unit Prime Alpha said as he entered the medical bay. The tall robot had been teaching Jinho about ship systems for the past 2 days, but progress was slow. There were too many interruptions from officials demanding meetings. "Admiral Kyung-ho arrives today," Jinho said, without turning from the window. "My father says he commands the entire colonial defense fleet. He will want to take control of the ship." "The ship will not respond to him," Unit Prime Alpha stated with certainty. "Only verified commanders can access architect technology." But what if he does not accept that answer? Before the robot could reply, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Aria 7's voice echoed from the walls. "Long-range sensors detect an anomaly approaching the outer system. Estimated arrival time, 14 hours. Jinho rushed to the nearest control panel, his hands moving across the interface with growing confidence. The ship's sensors showed him a view of space that made his blood freeze. Something was moving toward their star system, but it was not a ship or asteroid. It was a patch of absolute darkness that seemed to consume the light of distant stars. "The hunger," he whispered. Unit Prime. Alpha's glowing eyes flared brighter. "Negative. This energy signature matches Hunger Scout elements. The main entity remains in deep space, but it has sent advanced forces to investigate the ship's activation signal. How long until they reach us? Current trajectory indicates arrival at planetary orbit in approximately 12 hours. Jinho's mind raced. 12 hours was not enough time to evacuate the colony, and he doubted conventional weapons would be effective against something that ate starlight. The Eternal Vigil would have to fight. The bridge doors opened and Admiral Kyung-ho strode in, followed by a dozen military officers. He was a tall man with gray hair and the bearing of someone used to absolute authority. Behind him walked Captain Nari and Jinho's father, both looking uncomfortable. "You must be the boy who found this ship," Admiral Kyung-ho said, barely glancing at Jinho. "I am commandeering this vessel in the name of the Colonial Defense Authority." "The ship does not work that way," Jinho replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "It only responds to specific people." Admiral Kyung-ho laughed. "Son, I have been commanding spacecraft longer than you have been alive. Every ship has manual controls." He turned to his officers. "Locate the primary control systems and establish military protocols." The officers spread out across the bridge, pulling out scanning equipment and trying to access the various control panels. Nothing responded to their touch. The screens remained dark and the ship's systems ignored their attempts to interface with them. "Aria 7, Jinho called out. "Show yourself, please." The holographic AI materialized in the center of the bridge, causing several officers to reach for their weapons. "Yes, Commander?" "Explain to Admiral Kyung-ho why the ship will not respond to his people." Aria 7 turned to face the Admiral with polite interest. "Architect technology requires neural patterns that match specific criteria: leadership potential, creative thinking, moral flexibility, and the ability to inspire others. Your neural scan indicates military efficiency, but lacks the required adaptability markers." Admiral Kyung-ho's face reddened. "This is ridiculous. I demand access to this ship's weapon systems immediately. We have detected an incoming threat." "Indeed you have," Area 7 confirmed. "Hunger Scout elements will arrive in 11 hours and 43 minutes. Only architect weapons can effectively engage them." "Then give me control of those weapons." "I cannot. The weapon systems will only activate under the command of a verified leader. Jinho has been recognized as such. You have not." The Admiral stepped closer to Jinho, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. Boy, people are going to die if you do not cooperate. Step aside and let real military professionals handle this situation. Jinho looked around the bridge. The military officers were still trying unsuccessfully to access the ship's systems. His father stood near the wall, worry clear on his face. Captain Nari watched everything with careful eyes. What happens if I refuse to step aside? Jinho asked. Then I will have you arrested for interfering with military operations during a crisis. Unit Prime Alpha moved between the Admiral and Jinho with fluid grace. That action would be inadvisable. The ship's defensive systems automatically protect the commander from physical threats. To demonstrate, one of the Admiral's officers tried to grab Jinho's arm. The moment his hand touched Jinho's shoulder, a barrier of blue energy surrounded the boy. The officer's hand passed through the barrier but could not make contact with Jinho himself. Fascinating, Admiral Kyungho said, but his tone was angry rather than impressed. So you hide behind alien technology while real soldiers prepare to die fighting this threat. Those words hit Jinho like a physical blow. The Admiral was right about one thing. People would die if the approaching scouts were not stopped. But he was wrong about everything else. Aria 7, show me the tactical situation, Jinho commanded, settling into the captain's chair. The bridge displays came alive with information. The dark scouts were still hours away, but their energy signatures were growing stronger. They moved through space by folding it around themselves, making them incredibly fast and nearly impossible to target with conventional weapons. Estimated enemy capabilities? Jinho asked. 3 scout vessels, each approximately 50 meters in length. Primary weapons appear to be energy drain systems designed to consume power sources. Secondary weapons include reality distortion fields that can tear apart normal matter. Admiral Kyungho studied the displays with professional interest despite his frustration. How do we fight something like that? Architect weapons use dimensional resonance to target entities existing in folded space, Unit Prime Alpha explained. However, they require a human commander to guide targeting solutions. Pure computer calculations are insufficient against hunger entities. Sujin entered the bridge, wearing a pilot's flight suit. She had spent the morning learning to interface with the ship's navigation systems and was making remarkable progress. Jinho, Area 7 says the ship needs a full crew for combat operations. Just you and the robots will not be enough. What kind of crew? Admiral Kyungho demanded. Humans who can interface with ship systems, Area 7 replied. Navigation, weapons targeting, engineering support, and tactical analysis. The technology responds better when multiple human minds work together. Jinho made his decision. Sujin, you are navigation and flight control. Father, I need you on engineering systems. Captain Nari, can you handle tactical analysis? Captain Nari looked surprised. I am not military. I just run colony security. But you think like a soldier and care about protecting people. That is what the ship needs. Admiral Kyungho stepped forward. This is insane. You are putting the defense of this system in the hands of children and civilians. I am putting it in the hands of people the ship recognizes as capable, Jinho replied, standing up from the captain's chair. Admiral, you are welcome to coordinate with the Planetary Defense Forces. But the Eternal Vigil fights under my command? Or not at all? The Admiral stared at him for a long moment, then nodded grimly. Very well, but when this is over, there will be a full investigation into your fitness for this responsibility. If we are all still alive when this is over, Jinho said, you can investigate anything you want. As the Admiral and his officers left the bridge, Jinho felt the weight of command settling on his shoulders. In 10 hours, he would lead his first battle against an enemy that had defeated the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. He could only hope that human intuition and architect technology would be enough. The training period was over. It was time to find out if humanity truly deserved to inherit the stars. The Hunger Scouts arrived exactly when Area 7 predicted they would. Jinho watched from the captain's chair as 3 patches of absolute darkness tore through the fabric of space itself, emerging from folded dimensions like nightmares becoming real. All stations report ready, Sujin announced from the navigation console. She had learned to interface with the ship's movement systems faster than anyone expected. Blue light flowed along her hands as she maintained connection with the navigation network. Tajin was at the engineering station, monitoring power levels and system status. His practical engineering mind had adapted well to architect technology, though he still muttered about specifications that made no sense. Power core stable at 97%. All weapon systems showing green. Captain Nari studied the tactical displays with intense concentration. Enemy vessels are maintaining distance from the planet. They seem to be scanning for something. They are looking for the source of the activation signal. Unit Prime Alpha explained from his position near the main screen. The ship's awakening sent ripples through dimensional space. The Hunger Scouts have come to investigate. Admiral Kyung-ho's voice crackled through the communication system from the planet's surface. All colonial defense ships are in position. We count 37 vessels ready to engage. Jin-ho knew those ships would be useless against the Scouts. Their weapons could not harm entities that existed partially outside normal space, and their armor would not protect them from reality distortion fields. But he also knew the Admiral needed to feel like he was contributing to the defense. Admiral, keep your ships between the Scouts and the planet, Jin-ho ordered. If any of the enemy vessels break through our engagement, you are the last line of defense. Understood. Good hunting, son. The 3 scout ships began moving toward the planet, and Jin-ho got his first clear look at the enemy. They were not ships in any traditional sense. Each one was a flowing mass of darkness that seemed to bend light around it. Where normal space met the scout vessels, reality twisted and writhed like something in pain. Beginning intercept course, Sujin reported. The Eternal Vigil turned smoothly through space, its movements far more graceful than any human-built ship. Estimated time to weapons range, 4 minutes. Arya 7, explain our weapons to me one more time, Jin-ho said, trying to calm his nerves. The AI's holographic form flickered with concentration. Primary weapons are dimensional resonance cannons. They fire concentrated bursts of folded space-time that can damage entities existing in multiple dimensions. Secondary weapons are quantum disruption torpedoes that tear holes in dimensional barriers. And these will work against the Scouts? The weapons will work. Success depends on your ability to target enemies that exist partially outside normal space. You must trust your instincts rather than rely purely on sensor data. The first Scout ship suddenly accelerated, moving faster than physics should allow. It folded space around itself, essentially teleporting across thousands of kilometers in seconds. Evasive maneuvers, Jin-ho commanded. Sujin's hands danced across her controls, and the ship twisted away from the Scouts' attack. Where the Eternal Vigil had been moments before, space itself cracked like broken glass. Return fire, Jin-ho ordered, pointing at the Scout ship. The targeting system responded to his gesture, and blue energy lanced out from the ship's forward cannons. The dimensional resonance beam struck the Scout vessel, and it writhed like a living thing in pain. But it was not destroyed. Minimal damage to target 1, Captain Nari reported. The entity is adapting to our weapon frequencies. The second Scout ship attacked from a different angle, its reality distortion field reaching out like invisible claws. The Eternal Vigil's shields flared as they deflected the attack, but Jin-ho could feel the strain on the ship's systems. We need a different approach, he said, studying the enemy movements. They are adapting too quickly to direct assault. Unit Prime Alpha turned from his console. The architects faced this same problem. Individual ships could damage hunger entities but rarely destroy them completely. They learned to coordinate attacks with multiple vessels. We only have one ship, Taejin pointed out from the engineering station. But we have multiple human minds, Area 7 said suddenly. The ship can channel different types of dimensional energy through each crew station. If you coordinate your attacks, the Scouts cannot adapt to all frequencies simultaneously. Jin-ho understood immediately. Sujin, can you pilot the ship and operate a weapon system at the same time? I can try, she replied, sweat beading on her forehead from the effort of maintaining connection with the navigation network. Captain Nari, father, same question for you. Both nodded, though they looked uncertain about their ability to multitask at this level. The third scout ship joined the attack, and suddenly the Eternal Vigil was surrounded by enemies that could appear anywhere without warning. Normal space twisted around them as the scouts used their reality distortion fields like weapons. Now, Jinho shouted. All weapons, different frequencies, target all three ships simultaneously. 4 streams of dimensional energy lanced out from different parts of the ship. Each beam carried a unique frequency signature, guided by a different human mind. The scouts, which had been adapting to single-frequency attacks, suddenly found themselves overwhelmed by multiple types of dimensional weapons. The first scout ship began to collapse in on itself as competing frequencies tore it apart from the inside. The second vessel tried to retreat, but Sujin anticipated its movement, placing a torpedo directly in its escape path. The explosion sent ripples through folded space that made reality itself ring like a struck bell. The third scout, seeing its companions destroyed, tried a desperate attack. It folded space around itself and the Eternal Vigil, attempting to drag both ships into dimensional chaos where normal physics would not apply. Ship systems failing, Teijin reported as alarms sounded throughout the bridge. We are being pulled into some kind of spatial anomaly. Jinho felt the ship's systems responding sluggishly to his commands. In the twisted space around the scout vessel, architect technology was struggling to function properly, but human intuition still worked perfectly. Area 7. Can the ship survive in folded space? For a limited time, but conventional navigation is impossible in dimensional chaos. Then we do not navigate conventionally. Jinho closed his eyes and reached out with his mind, feeling for the scout ship through the chaos of twisted reality. There, a cold presence that felt like hunger and emptiness. All weapons target my mental coordinates. Trust me, not the sensors. Energy weapons fired blind into the dimensional storm. Jinho guided each shot with pure instinct, feeling rather than seeing where the enemy vessel was hiding. One by one, the beams found their target. The scout ship's death scream was something felt rather than heard. Reality snapped back to normal as the entity's control over folded space collapsed. The Eternal Vigil tumbled through normal space, its systems gradually coming back online. All scouts destroyed, Captain Nari reported, disbelief clear in her voice. No additional contacts on sensors. Jinho slumped back in the captain's chair, exhausted. The mental effort of targeting through dimensional chaos had drained him completely. Around him, his crew looked equally tired, but victorious. Damage report, he managed to say. Minor systems failures only, Teijin replied. The ship is designed for this kind of combat. We are fully operational. Admiral Kyung-ho's voice came through the communication system, filled with relief and amazement. Eternal Vigil, this is Admiral Kyung-ho. Outstanding work. All planetary sensors confirm enemy destruction. How did you do it? Jinho looked around the bridge at his impromptu crew. Sujin was grinning despite her exhaustion. Captain Nari was studying the tactical displays with professional interest. His father was already running diagnostic routines on the ship's systems. We worked together, Jinho replied. Human creativity and architect technology. The scouts could adapt to individual attacks, but they could not handle coordinated group tactics. And this is just the beginning, Unit Prime Alpha added. These were only scouts. The main hunger entities are far more dangerous. Area 7's holographic form looked more solid somehow, as if the successful battle had strengthened her systems. Long-range sensors detect response signals from 7 of the other sleeping ships. Your victory has begun the awakening process. Jinho felt a mixture of pride and terror. They had won their first battle against the hunger, but the war was just beginning. Somewhere in the galaxy, other young people would soon be facing the same choice he had made, accept the burden of command or watch their species face extinction. At least now he knew it was possible to fight back and win. 6 months had passed since the battle with the Hunger Scouts. Jinho stood on the observation deck of the Eternal Vigil, watching as the 11th Architect's ship took its position in the defensive formation. The fleet that had once existed only in ancient databases was now real, commanded by humans from across the galaxy. Wisdom's light reporting ready status, came the voice of Commander Yunbi over the communication system. She had been a teacher on Mars before her ship awakened, and her gentle nature masked a tactical mind that impressed even Area 7. My crew has completed integration protocols. Mercy's hand standing by, reported Commander Jiwan from Europa. The former rescue worker had proven exceptional at coordinating multiple ships during training exercises. All systems green and ready for patrol assignment. Jinho smiled as he listened to the reports. Each commander brought something unique to the fleet. Sang-jun, a young artist from the outer colonies, commanded the ship called Song of Stars with an intuitive grasp of dimensional navigation that amazed the robots. Yuna, barely 20 years old, led the Flame of Hope with fierce determination that reminded everyone why humanity had been chosen. Fleet status report, Jinho requested, settling into the captain's chair that had become as familiar as his own bed. Unit Prime Alpha appeared on the bridge with his usual precise movements. 11 vessels operational and fully crewed. 1 ship remains dormant, the heart of courage in the Centauri system. Long-range scans indicate the vessel is intact but has not yet found a suitable commander. And the defense network? 97% complete. Sensor stations and weapon platforms have been established along the galactic rim. Any major hunger incursion will be detected immediately. Area 7 materialized beside the command chair, her holographic form now stable and detailed after months of integration with human crews. The network represents the most advanced early warning system in galactic history. The architects would be proud. Sujin looked up from the navigation console where she was coordinating fleet movements. Speaking of the architects, any word on why they really left? I still find it hard to believe they just gave up. They did not give up. Unit Prime Alpha corrected. They transcended physical existence to explore dimensions beyond normal space-time. But they knew the hunger would eventually threaten younger species, so they prepared the tools needed for defense. Taejin, now serving as the fleet's chief engineering coordinator, studied readouts from all 11 ships. These tools are incredible. Each ship's power core generates more energy than our entire planetary grid, and the manufacturing systems can create materials that do not exist in normal space. The technology is impressive, Captain Nari agreed from the tactical station. But the real strength is how it responds to human crews. Every ship performs differently based on its commander's personality and thinking style. That was true, Jinho reflected. The Eternal Vigil fought with calculated precision that matched his own systematic approach to problems. But Sang-jun's Song of Stars moved like poetry in motion, while Yuna's Flame of Hope attacked with overwhelming force. The ships were not just tools. They were extensions of their commanders' minds and spirits. Incoming priority message, announced Mirai from the communication station. She had joined the Eternal Vigil's crew after completing training on ship systems, and her steady presence helped keep Jinho grounded when the responsibility felt overwhelming. The Q. Main screen activated to show Admiral Kyungho, transmitting from Earth's orbital command center. Over the past months, he had become one of Jinho's strongest supporters, helping coordinate between the architect fleet and conventional military forces. Jinho, we have a situation, the Admiral began without preamble. Long-range deep space. Monitors have detected massive energy signatures moving toward the galactic rim. The patterns match theoretical projections for major hunger entities. The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew this day would come eventually, but 6 months of successful patrols and training exercises had made it easy to hope they would have more. Time to prepare. How many entities? Jinho asked. Minimum of 7, possibly as many as 12. They are still beyond our sensor range, but the gravitational distortions they create are detectable. Estimated time of arrival: 3 weeks. 3 weeks to prepare for the battle that would determine humanity's survival. Jinho felt the familiar weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders, but this time it felt different. He was no longer the uncertain teenager who had accidentally activated an alien ship. 6 months of command experience had taught him to trust his instincts and rely on his crew. Admiral, begin evacuation of all non-essential personnel from rim colonies, military and volunteer personnel only in the defense zones. Already underway. What about the civilian populations in the core systems? Jinho considered the question carefully. Full disclosure. Tell them what we are facing and what we plan to do about it. People deserve to know the truth. Unit Prime Alpha's glowing eyes flickered with approval. The architects believe that informed populations make better decisions than ignorant ones. Your choice honors their memory. Over the next hour, Jinho coordinated with his fellow commanders to position the fleet along the most likely approach routes. The hunger entities were coming from the galactic void, beyond the rim where normal space gave way to the emptiness between galaxies. They would probably follow gravity wells toward populated systems. One more thing, Area 7 said as the planning session concluded. The dormant ship in the Centauri system has begun showing activation signs. Someone there may be responding to the approaching threat. Send Jiwan's Mercy's Hand to investigate, Jinho ordered. If there is a potential commander in that system, we need to find them before the hunger arrives. As his fellow commanders signed off to prepare their ships and crews, Jinho remained on the bridge, staring at the tactical display. 11 ships against an enemy that had forced the most advanced civilization in the galaxy to abandon physical existence. The odds were not encouraging. You look worried, young commander, Unit Prime Alpha observed. I am worried, but I am also determined. Jinho stood up from the captain's chair and looked around the bridge at his crew. His family, really. The architects chose humanity for a reason. They saw something in us that made them believe we could succeed where they could not. What do you think that something was? Sujin asked. Jinho smiled, remembering the scared teenager who had first touched an alien hand scanner in a salvage yard. Hope. The architects had incredible technology and vast knowledge, but they had grown beyond hope. Humans still believe that impossible things can become possible if you are willing to try hard enough. Echo, the small educational robot who had become something like a mascot for the crew, looked up from her learning station. The approaching hunger entities have never faced coordinated resistance from architect technology guided by human intuition. They expect the same passive defense strategies that failed against them before. Then we will give them something they do not expect, Jinho said firmly. Area 7 begin final preparations for fleet-wide combat operations. All ships are to operate under distributed command protocols. Each commander makes tactical decisions for their own vessel while maintaining coordination with the group. That approach carries significant risk, Unit Prime Alpha warned. If communications are disrupted, the fleet could become fragmented. It also means the enemy cannot predict our actions by studying a single command style, Captain Nari pointed out. 11 different tactical approaches working together could be impossible to counter. Jinho nodded. The hunger has spent millennia learning to fight predictable opponents. Time to show them what unpredictable looks like. As the Eternal Vigil and its sister ships moved toward their defensive positions, Jinho felt a calm certainty settling over him. Humanity had been given the tools to fight back against the darkness. Now they would discover whether they were worthy of the gift. In 3 weeks, the real war would begin. But for the first time since activating the alien ship, Jinho truly believed humanity could win. The boy who had found a buried treasure in a salvage yard had become the young man who would help save the galaxy. And he was ready.